All right, welcome in everyone to another deep dive. Today we're looking at something I'm sure you've all come across if you spend any time on social media,
Yeah,
especially on platforms like Instagram.
definitely.
It's that sometimes huge difference between how effortlessly beautiful influencers seem to be
Hmm.
and the less talked about world of cosmetic surgery and procedures
Right?
that may or may not go into those carefully curated looks.
Absolutely.
We're going to be looking at a really interesting discussion from the Filtered Behind the Screens podcast.
Okay.
Their episode is titled Instagram versus Reality: The Surgery Secrets of Influencers.
Interesting.
Our mission today is to understand just how widespread this gap is between online presentation and reality.
Right.
We'll explore the reasons why these things aren't often disclosed and
Hmm.
try to get a clearer picture of what procedures are actually involved, and then ultimately just consider what this all means for you as
Right.
a consumer of this content.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think what Alex and Jamie, the hosts of Filtered, do so well
Hmm.
is they highlight this really fascinating tension between the idealized online self
Right.
and the often very deliberate steps that go into constructing that self.
Yeah.
Um, and they brought up some really compelling points and statistics
Yeah.
that I think will really resonate with anyone who's ever, like you said, scroll through their feed.
Yeah.
Well, how do they do that?
Exactly. So let's dive right in.
Okay.
One of the first things that really stood out to me in the filtered episode was this contrast
Okay.
between the impression of natural, almost accidental beauty that
Right.
a lot of influencers project versus the potential reality that there's some pretty significant surgical enhancements that have gone into that.
Mhm.
And they pointed out that it's really common to see these influencers using hashtags like no filter,
Right.
while maybe not mentioning the fact that they've had something like a rhinoplasty
Oh, yeah.
to get their seemingly perfect nose. So it's kind of this like,
I think that's what's so striking about it.
yeah.
What Filtered is hinting at is this culture of like manufactured perfection.
Yeah.
It's not just about individual choices anymore. It's like
Right.
there's this systemic pressure
Right.
within the influencer industry itself.
Yeah.
And they cited a statistic
Yeah.
that is really kind of crazy.
Okay.
1 in 5 influencers
Wow.
may have had some form of cosmetic procedure, but only 12% actually disclose it.
So that's a huge gap.
That's a massive gap.
Yeah. What's behind that?
What is behind the lack of transparency?
Well, Alex and Jamie had some theories.
Okay.
And one of the main ones was this fear of losing that relatability with their followers.
Right.
If an influencer openly admits to having work done, the thinking is that the audience might see them as less authentic,
Right. Less like them.
less like them.
And that's like the key, isn't it?
Exactly. And in the influencer world, that connection is everything.
It's everything because relatability equals engagement.
Likes, comments, shares.
Uh,
And that engagement leads to brand partnerships,
right.
which is, of course, the lifeblood of an influencer's career.
Exactly.
The other thing they talked about
Yeah.
was the potential impact it could have on those partnerships.
Right.
Like, say you're an influencer who's promoting skincare.
Right. Okay.
It might not be the best look if your followers know that your perfect skin is because of laser treatments
Right.
or something, and not just the product you're selling.
Yeah, that makes sense from a business perspective. But here's where it gets a little unsettling.
Okay.
For those of us who are listening and constantly consuming this content, when these enhancements aren't disclosed,
Right.
it creates and perpetuates these really unrealistic beauty standards.
Right. It sets up this expectation
Yeah.
of what is naturally achievable
Mhm.
just through diet and exercise.
Right. And you end up looking in the mirror thinking, why don't I look like that
Yeah.
when I'm doing all the right thing?
When I'm doing everything I'm supposed to.
Mm.
And if you think about the bigger picture,
Yeah.
it's not just adults dealing with this,
Right.
teenagers,
Right.
young adults,
Yeah.
who are constantly on these platforms
Mm-hmm.
and are still forming their self-image.
Right.
They're the ones who are particularly vulnerable to
Yeah.
these heavily curated images.
Yeah.
And it can really negatively impact their
Yeah.
self-esteem, their body image,
Right.
mental well-being.
Yeah, because they compare their own perfectly normal appearance
Right.
to these fabricated ideals.
Absolutely.
So the hosts of Filtered also went into some specific cosmetic procedures
Okay.
that are apparently really popular
Which is-
among influencers but not openly talked about.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about some of those
All right.
Brazilian butt lifts, or BBLs as they're called, came up.
Yeah.
And it seems like there's this whole phenomenon around it in the influencer community.
I've heard of this.
Yeah.
What they were saying is that some influencers will travel
Yeah.
to places like Turkey or South Korea, where the cost of these procedures can be so much lower, and they time the recovery.
To look like they're on vacation.
Oh, wow.
So they can have this procedure done
Yeah.
without having to actually disclose it.
And just attribute it to, oh, I just had a really relaxing time.
Exactly. It's fascinating how calculated it is.
It's a strategy.
Yeah.
They also talked about buccal fat removal.
Okay.
Can you explain what that is and what some of the potential downsides are?
So buccal fat removal is a procedure where they remove these pads of fat that are in your cheeks
Okay.
through an incision inside your mouth. Okay. And it makes your face look more sculpted,
Okay.
more chiseled. But one of the concerns is that it can cause premature aging.
Oh, really?
Because as we age, we naturally lose fat in our faces.
Yeah.
So if you don't have much there to begin with,
Yeah.
it can make you look gaunt later on.
Interesting. So like a short-term aesthetic gain,
Yeah,
potentially for a long-term trade-off.
exactly.
They also mentioned lip lifts and fox eye threads.
Oh, yeah. These sound like they're really going for that Instagram face
Yeah.
that we see everywhere.
So can you break those down for us?
So lip lifts are a surgical procedure
Okay.
that raises your upper lip to make it look fuller. And it makes the space between your nose and your lip smaller.
Okay.
And then fox eye threads are less invasive.
Okay.
But they're not permanent. They involve putting these dissolvable threads onto your skin
Okay.
by your eyebrows.
Oh.
And then they pull them up
Okay.
to give you that almond-shaped eye look.
Yeah. So it's interesting because it brings up this question of the
Yeah.
ethics of disclosure.
Right.
Do influencers have a responsibility to be upfront about these procedures?
That's a tough one.
It is a tough one.
Alex and Jamie mentioned that France is trying to pass a law
Right.
that will require influencers to disclose this.
Oh, wow.
But how do you even enforce that?
Right. Like, are the Insta police going to be out there
Yeah.
checking everyone's faces?
Yeah, where do we even draw the line?
Right. Is a good skincare routine a procedure?
Right.
What about injectables versus surgery?
It gets complicated.
It does get complicated.
But they did talk about
Yeah.
how different influencers have different experiences
Yeah.
when it comes to being transparent. Like this one influencer, Real Talk Riley,
Okay.
she's very open about the work she's had done, and her followers seem to love it.
Okay.
But then there's this other influencer, Glam Guru, who apparently lost a lot of followers
Oh, wow.
after she admitted to getting a nose job. So it's like, you're damned if you do, damned if you don't.
It's tough. And they also brought up this point about the double standard.
Yeah.
It seems like when a big celebrity like Kylie Jenner
Right.
is open about procedures, it's almost celebrated.
Yeah.
But then smaller creators might face so much more criticism.
Yeah. Because they're supposed to be more relatable,
Right.
more like us.
Exactly. And Filtered shared some stories from their listeners.
Oh, that's interesting.
And this one really stood out to me.
Okay.
Someone with the username BeautyBabe said that she really regretted getting a nose job when she was just 19 because she was trying to look like an influencer.
Oh, that's so sad.
It really is sad to think about the pressure to make these permanent changes.
Based on trends
Yeah.
that come and go.
Exactly. And for anyone listening who might be wondering,
Yeah.
how do you even spot if someone's had work done? Alex and Jamie had some funny but helpful tips.
Okay.
They said to look for features that don't really change over time.
Okay.
Like we all have pores and wrinkles
Right.
and a little bit of asymmetry. So if someone's face is perfectly smooth
Yeah.
all the time,
Maybe a red flag.
maybe a red flag. And then they also joked about how sometimes someone's waist looks impossibly tiny
Right.
compared to their head.
Like they were born with a Barbie waist.
Exactly. So looking ahead then,
Okay.
what does the future hold for influencer culture? Filtered talked about some shifts they're starting to see.
Well, the good news is
Yeah.
there are some counter movements happening.
Okay.
Like body positivity is becoming more and more popular.
Yeah.
And there are challenges like No Surgery November,
I've seen that.
where people are encouraging more authenticity online.
Right.
And then there are influencers like Anastava
Yeah.
who show their unfiltered selves,
Yes, I
stretch
do.
marks, scars, and all. So hopefully we're moving towards
Yeah.
normalizing real bodies.
I like that. So as we wrap up this deep dive,
Mm-hmm.
the main takeaway here is your worth, your beauty has nothing to do with the filtered images you see
Right.
or these unrealistic standards
That's-
that are
that's-
all over social media.
If you do choose to get cosmetic procedures,
Yeah.
that's your choice.
Yeah.
But it's so important to be honest about it and don't contribute to this illusion
Yeah.
that everything is natural.
Be critical of what you see online.
Yeah,
And remember, your self-acceptance and your well-being are the most important things.
absolutely.
So finally, I want to leave you with this thought. Think about the pressure that leads people to want these procedures. What does it mean for us to be living in a culture where these online personas are often more important than reality? What does that do to our sense of self in this digital age?
That's a great question.
It is something to think about. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.